Have you ever heard the tale of Edward Mordrake, the man born with two faces? One face of beauty, and the other pure evil? A man said to be so tormented by the whispering, sinister voice of his second face that he begged doctors to remove it. When they refused, he took matters into his own hands. It's a story that sends shivers down your spine. A dark story that's been retold for over a century. But here's the real question. Did Edward Mordrake actually exist? Let's unravel the mystery. First thing first, the viral mummified skull of Edward Mordrake is actually a papier-mâché sculpture by an artist named Hewitt Schindler. Edward Mordrake, the two-faced man, is purely fiction. The legend of Edward Mordrake originates from the 19th century. According to the story, Edward was born into English nobility, a young man of great intelligence and charm. But he carried a dark burden, a second face on the back of his head. This face was described as grotesque, very evil. It couldn't eat or speak, but it could whisper. And what did it whisper? Evil thoughts that only Edward could hear. Some say the whispers drove him mad. The story goes that Edward pleaded with doctors to remove the second face, but they refused. Desperate and tormented, he took his own life at the age of 23, leaving behind a note begging for the demon face to be destroyed before burial. As eerie as this story sounds, historians and medical experts have pored over it, and they've found no concrete evidence that Edward Mordrake ever existed. The earliest mention of Edward Mordrake comes from an 1895 article in the Boston Post. The article was part of a series on medical oddities, but it wasn't exactly based on rigorous research. In fact, the series leaned heavily into sensationalism. The story wasn't written by a doctor or a historian. It was penned by a writer named Charles Lowton Hildreth, who had a flair for the dramatic. He combined real medical conditions with pure fiction, creating tales that were as entertaining as they were creepy. So, where did the idea of a second face come from? Well, it's likely inspired by real medical conditions like craniofacial duplication, a rare congenital disorder where parts of the face are duplicated. Craniofacial duplication, or diprosopis, is an extremely rare condition caused by abnormal protein signaling during embryonic development. However, these duplications are usually non-functional, and the idea of a whispering face is purely fictional. Then there's another condition called parasitic twins. This happens when one twin stops developing properly and becomes partially absorbed by the other. While this might result in extra limbs or even parts of a face, there's no evidence of consciousness or whispering. So, if the story of Edward Mordrake isn't real, why has it endured for so long? Perhaps it's because it taps into some of our deepest fears. The idea of being haunted by something we can't escape, a darkness that follows us wherever we go. And let's not forget the fascination with medical oddities in the 19th century. Stories like Edward's were exaggerated to draw crowds, sell papers, and spark curiosity. So, what do you think? Could there be a kernel of truth hidden in the legend of Edward Mordrake, or is it just a creepy campfire story? Maybe the real lesson here isn't about whether Edward existed, but why we're so drawn to stories like his. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more fascinating facts.